Trying to conceive and feeling overwhelmed and confused with unhelpful information and advice? This podcast is for you. Welcome to Don't Tell Me to Relax. I'm your host, Hannah Pern, a fertility acupuncturist and passionate advocate for better fertility education and support. Our aim is to empower you with information to support your fertility journey and provide a community for connection with people who get where you're at. If you'd like to join us or work with us in clinic in London or across the UK, all the information is in the show notes at the end. Before we jump into today's episode, I'm quickly here to let you know that we are opening full-time for fertility acupuncture in central London, Victoria at the end of Feb. And if you're not in London, we have clinics around the UK and we work online. Hello everyone and welcome to today's episode of Don't Tell Me to Relax. Today I am joined by Sian and Catherine, who together are the hosts of the IVF BFF podcast. Sian and Catherine are both navigating IVF journeys. They are in the middle of them as we speak and release a weekly podcast detailing their experiences. Sian and Catherine also met in our online community, but actually they knew each other before, but reconnected through our Don't Tell Me to Relax support community, which I heard and thought, well, hang on a minute. We would love to get you both on the podcast to tell us your journeys, tell us why you decided to do the podcast and hear about how it's been going and how you've been finding navigating IVF and doing a podcast at the same time. So thank you for your time today because I know you are both in the middle of it. So can I just ask you both, I'll start with you, Catherine, because you are on the farthest side of my screen, to introduce yourself and say how you came to where you are today.
Okay, yeah, hi. My name's Catherine. And yeah, I never know how far to go back with this, but I met my husband quite a while ago. We've been together for nearly 10 years. So we met when we were 24. When I was 24, he's a few years older than me. But, you know, very much in our 20s, you know, just enjoying life and building our careers, jobs, that sort of thing. And so we didn't actually come to think about TTC until we'd been married for, you know, about 5 years, etc. And then we kind of thought, right, now is the time. We're finally kind of set up, as if that's a thing, like as if you can ever be truly ready. But we felt, okay, right, let's do it. And then started. And even then we thought, was this a bit too soon? Are we really ready for it? It could happen like right away. And then it just didn't really happen. I'm sure that's a story that lots of people listening will identify with. And so we, kept going. And then it was quite quickly, in the grand scheme of things, that I panicked a little bit in my head and went, something's wrong. I think, again, we all do that a little bit, don't we? And, you know, my husband, Carl, he was like, you know, it's not been that long and let's just keep going and we'll see. But I think I had a bit of a gut feeling that something was off. So I went to my GP after sort of about maybe nine months of trying. For context, I'm 33, so, you know, I know it's supposed to kind of be a year, but luckily I did have a GP that took me really seriously because I was ready to fight my corner, but my GP took me really seriously and said, yep, no problem. And I'd also heard from friends how the process can be quite stilted. So I thought, right, let's just get the ball rolling. And the whole process was sort of like, well, let's just get this test done. And then we, you know, we can book in the blood tests, but we probably won't need them because we'll get pregnant. And then we can book it. We can ask for a referral, but we probably won't need it because we'll get pregnant. And then each of those markers kind of went by and it's like, oh, we did need it in the end. So I had all the GP tests done. Everything kind of came back on my side absolutely fine. Tick, tick, tick. And then my husband had his semen analysis done. And there was about a 3-month wait for that, actually, with our local GP, which is just the way it was. But we didn't really anticipate that. And so he got his results back and we were kind of joking. My husband's very health conscious, he's a PT. He's, you know, his diet is fantastic, much better than mine. He eats green stuff a lot. And so we were like, well, you're fine. You know, it's not going to be you. You're Mr. Health. And we were kind of getting it done as a checkbox exercise. But then all of his tests did come back all his values really on the low side, which was a bit of a shock, really. And I know that he's now really passionate about kind of speaking up about the male side of it because, people just don't. It was a shock to him, and he felt very on his own and very it was a real kind of, a real shocker, really, of a moment. But then that quite quickly for us fast-tracked the process of kind of, seeing a fertility clinic and being put forward for ICSI, which is where they inject the sperm, which is often used in male factor. So it's a weird thing. It's not the news we wanted, but at least with a diagnosis, we were sort of like, okay, there's something tangible, there's something we can hang on to. And there's now a pathway for us. And I know it's so not clear for everybody else. It's much more difficult if you don't have a clear-cut cause. But and then we were referred to a fertility clinic, and quite quickly that process happened of all the tests. Had the hycosis, which was lovely, but it wasn't actually that bad for me because everything on my side came back fine, really. But the sperm was identified as the issue. But we're really lucky, so fortunate that we qualify for NHS care, NHS treatment. And once we got that result, it all moved quite quickly, which again, I know isn't everyone's experience, but
How long was it from the diagnosis to getting your first appointment at the fertility clinic?
So, well, actually, it would have been longer, but I had already asked for a referral from my GP, and I asked for that when my first blood tests came back, which was around May time. And they went, that's all fine. And I said, okay, but can we have a referral, please? And the first GP said, no, we have to wait for your husband to have the sperm analysis. And it was booked in, but for, 2 or 3 months in the future. And I was like, okay. But then, because I don't know if it was pushy, but I was like, you know what? I just sat on that and I went, but we're going to want a referral anyway. And this is kind of the way I've approached all of it, hence going to the doctors a little bit early and kind of, pushing or, asking for things. I phoned up again and I said, look, can we just have that referral, please? Because if my husband's results are not good, we'll get it anyway. And if they are still fine, I still want extra investigation. And then again, a lovely GP. They're all lovely, but, this GP said, yeah, okay, that makes perfect sense. I'm going to make that for you now. So the referral was made. So to put it into context, first spoke to my GP in March 2023. No, sorry, March 2024. Get my years mixed up. Then got referred to the fertility clinic at our local hospital in the end of June 2024. And then we were booked in for tests in September. So
not too long at all then.
Yeah, and then exactly, we were so lucky. And then actually the IVF was booked in at the end of October. That was when I saw Sian at the hospital for the first time, actually. We had the same appointment on the same day. Not the same appointment, but back-to-back appointments. And that was end of October that we booked in for our IVF to start in January. So, and I know that that's not everyone's experience, but we were very fortunate in that sense.
Thank you. And Sian, how about you? What has been the journey to lead you to this point?
I think really mine's been a bit longer, I think. The way I sort of visualize it all is probably from now that I look back and I'm reflecting on it, it's kind of fits for me into 3 parts, really. So the first part is just the repeated trying and convincing ourselves it's normal. I mean, we've all been there. And that stage kind of did go on for a while. That kind of encompassed before getting married. And we kept going naturally and just thinking, this is kind of how it goes. Some people it just kind of takes longer. But upon reflection, it feels like the definition of madness. Doing the same thing over and over again and not getting a different outcome. And it really did take us a while to realise that something wasn't right. I think I probably got there quicker than my husband, but I think I just was trying to convince myself, there's not a huge amount really in terms of the guidance on the NHS website. I know they do their best. This is not a criticism, but there's not a huge amount on there for people who are kind of going, look, I've been trying a while now. What have I got to do? I know diet and lifestyle comes up. What else? You know, because that's kind of the easy thing that you can kind of fix fairly quickly. But you're like, well, it's still not working. So for me, that was a really tough place to sit. And it was kind of, it took a long time for us to kind of accept. And I call the next part of our journey the realization. That was the moment where we go, something isn't right here and we need to do something about it. And actually that was kind of mostly during 2024. So we went to a GP on Boxing Day. The day after Boxing Day last year. Woohoo! Merry Christmas. And we were sitting there, and I remember my husband was kind of like, why are we even here? Like, we don't need to be here. And I was like, I have to be here. So, and there can be, I think, in that time, a slightly disconnect and a disjoint in relationships. I don't think that people talk about that enough. Luckily, our GP also kind of took it seriously and said, well, let's do some tests. What's the harm? And we called 2024 the year of testing and the year of holidays. Yeah. So we did all the tests we could possibly do. And we also tried to make our life as normal as possible whilst also trying to conceive. So that's kind of where that was. And, we had those tests. Mine came back absolutely fine. I had a HSG, which I personally find, I've always found smear tests really difficult. But I always manage to battle through them because I can't not do them. And I got through the HSG. They actually gave me Valium, which is an interesting thing to be given. Didn't really touch the sides, but that's fine. And then my husband had his sperm analysis, and that came back borderline, really. It was quite strange how the doctor phrased it, because the doctor kind of saw it and said, I don't really know what to say, because these results don't mean that you couldn't get pregnant. She was like, actually, you probably could, So it kind of left us hanging. We were like, so what are we? Is it male factor? Is it unexplained? We don't know. And bearing in mind as well, I think my husband did the analysis months before we got the results. They would not tell us the results for months. 6 months.
Gosh, why? What was the reason they wouldn't tell you?
They just didn't have an appointment, and they don't give results without the appointment. And I tried everything. And it was really tough, because during that time, your head goes to all sorts of really dark places. But we battled through, and, we're a real team now. It's taken a little while for us to make sure that we're on the same chapter. And actually, the results weren't horrific for either of us, really. And then we waited a bit longer. There was a lot of waiting in this phase. And then we ended up at Kingston Hospital. And I have to say, the care has been absolutely incredible. And I guess this is the third phase of where we are. We're now in the treatment phase. And even though I am very aware of what this could mean, and that I know that IVF isn't necessarily a fix-all, it feels different and it feels proactive. And for me, that's great mentally. It's hard. It feels like we're doing something, even though it's daunting.
Yeah. And so you're both in the middle of treatment. Well, hang on. Before we talk about your treatment, can I ask about, so you knew each other previously, like way back?
Yeah. So we worked together about 10 years ago. And we used to teach drama together. And we were friendly, but we only really saw each other at work, and we were running kids drama classes. So that's kind of once a week, quite ad hoc. It's so funny in our podcast, I think in the first episode, Sian went, yeah, we weren't very close. And I'm like, oh, I quite liked you actually. And Sian's like, oh yeah, I liked you too. But yeah, we weren't like besties, which is really funny.
Different friendship comes
Yeah, like a work friend.
Yeah, a work friend. But
then.
also when you're going through something like this, it's quite an intense thing. And I
Yeah.
feel like the friendships that you create in this are
It's trauma bonding, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I joined your wonderful group, Hannah, your Facebook group, Don't Tell Me to Relax. I just saw the name. I was like, that is brilliant. I need to be in that group. And then I think I saw Sian. We saw each other, like we both commented on a post or something. And I was like, I know her. And Sian slid into my DMs and she went, oh my God, Catherine, you're here too, sort of thing. Like, how are you finding it all? And then I think we sent the first voice note of many. And then our kind of stories ended up aligning in quite a weird way, because I knew that at first it was just like, oh, you're going through this too. Hope you're okay. Hope you're okay. And then I knew that we lived near each other, not too far. Then we both got referred to the same hospital. And then we both had our appointments at the same time. And then we both had our NHS funding approved on the same day.
Wow.
Like they phoned me to book in a consultant appointment. And then I was thinking they better call Sian next because she's going to freak out if she knows that I've been booked in, because we knew that we both had that, like it was the same day and everything. Yeah. And then we thought, well, this is a bit weird, really. And we both got booked in to start treatment in January. So our stories are very tightly woven, which helps you grow a closeness as well, I think.
It's funny that, because lots of people often join the community and ask about staying anonymous because they're worried about, people being able to see that they're part of a fertility community, which I completely understand, like that it's a private thing. And that is the problem with Facebook. And obviously you can be anonymous, but it's also interesting that by not being anonymous, you've connected with each other. And so there is sort of pros and cons for both approaches, I guess.
Yeah, I have to say, when I initially joined, again, your fabulous community, I was anonymous and I did post anonymous. But then I kind of started to realise, well, why am I doing that? I mean, it's absolutely fine. I understand. I totally understand. It's very private. But I started to realise still how taboo this is and how people don't want to talk about it. And I thought, actually, me and Catherine talked a lot and we were like, we kind of want to raise awareness about this. And that kind of cued our podcast, I suppose.
And I think for me, really similarly, I started thinking, well, what if I know someone in this group, which obviously I did, but then it was Sian, and Sian is lovely. So, but I kind of thought, well, what's the worst that's going to happen? Like, really, when you look at it, woman in her 30s would like to have a baby with her husband. Is it that groundbreaking or shocking? Or, once you get over telling people that you're trying and they all know what that means, that actually, that part's a little bit cringe. But I was like, is it like, should it be shocking or should it be embarrassing? Like, no. That's why I sort of started to put my head above the parapet, really, and do it not anonymously.
Yeah. And what was it that led you? Because I presume lots of people are in lots of different groups. They're really popular, aren't they, for getting information. What was it that led you to join the group? Were you looking for like information? Were you looking for guidance? Were you looking for connection? Like,
yeah,
all of that, I think.
Yeah, I think the real thing I was definitely finding was I felt really lonely. I had none of my friends were going through the same struggles. I watched them get pregnant so easily and I just couldn't understand, like, what is going on? What's wrong with me? I just felt like, oh my gosh, my friends are really supportive, but I needed help, I needed guidance, and I needed a space where I didn't feel so alone. I have a really long commute to work and I was looking for podcasts. I listened to your podcast, Hannah. I was listening to, anything I could get my hands on. I wanted real, raw conversations where people weren't afraid to be vulnerable. And I'll be honest, there's not a huge amount out there, especially people who are doing it at the time it happens. There's actually quite a lot of people talking about their experience after they've got their babies, which is obviously amazing and really valid. But actually, me and Catherine kind of said to each other, this is partly why I'm going slightly off on a tangent here, Hannah, apologies, but it's that connection, it's that community, that is the reason why we were kind of seeking each other.
Yeah. We kind of
diagnosed.
And we kind of thought, how many other people, specifically women, but also men, we have men follow us, and my husband's done an episode on our podcast, and that, I think, kind of pricked the ears of a lot more male partners. But I thought, how many people are sat at home going through this on their own and thinking, thinking they're the only ones. And so we sort of said, if we can help one person just sat in their living room, if we can make them feel like they're sat at the kitchen table with us with a cup of tea, that's all we wanted really from this. So,
And I totally get that, because when I started this, that was exactly the same conversation I had with a person that I was doing some mentoring with, because I was like, does the world really need another fertility podcast? And she was like, well, if you help one person, if one person listens and you have something to say, then yes. And I thought, that's good. That's good enough. That is actually good enough for me, because I know that people want information and they want to feel connected and they want to feel like somebody understands where they're at. It's a huge part of the reason why people come into clinic, but not everybody can afford to come into clinic or wants to come into clinic. So it's about providing another way of finding that support, or another medium that doesn't involve one-to-one work, I guess. So what? When did you decide you were going to do a podcast then? What point did you go, you know what, let's do a podcast?
Well, we were joking about it for a long time, and I think it was us kind of going, we both said we wish there was something out there, people going through it now. Like we kept hearing all these stories retrospectively, and that, like Sian said, there are some amazing podcasts, but a lot of them are like at least one person doing it, or a lot of their guests have gone through it and their chapter's sort of closed, or that was a part of their life. And we said, God, I wish there was something now. And I remember it really clearly, actually. Sian just went, well, why don't we do it? Why don't we just do that? And then for ages wasn't it, Sian? We were like, oh yeah, talk about it on the podcast. Yeah, on our podcast.
We would do like a voice note and kind of go, God, that'd be good in a podcast.
That'd be good for the podcast. And for a while it was like a little like pretend podcast. And then we just did it.
I remember you, Catherine, kind of saying, no, we should actually do this.
Oh, was it me?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think there was, I don't know. But I do remember you being like, let's book a time in. Let's do it.
Yeah. And then we went for a little lunch, didn't we? Which is just an excuse to get lunch, really.
Yeah.
Just have a little chat. We did some planning.
And so well, before we talk about the podcast, where are you at? Like, tell us where you're at in the journeys of your IVF, because you're both in the middle of treatment. So, Sian, do you want to tell us where you're at in your treatment, if for anybody who's not yet listened to your podcast?
Yeah. So this is our first, go at IVF in our first round. And I had egg collection on Friday, which was my birthday. Can you believe? I was freaking out because I was turning 36, but the nurse reassured me and said, yes, but your eggs were made at 35, which is helpful.
Yeah, good line from the nurse.
So I had egg collection on Friday. We've been getting updates. So we had updates on day 1, day 3, and now tomorrow is my day 5. So our clinic does transfers on day 5, blastocysts. So we're waiting for the final number tomorrow, and fingers crossed a transfer goes ahead.
Okay. So what time are you in tomorrow?
So we've got to be there at 1 o'clock for a 1:30 sort of get-go. I'm being sedated for this, which feels really kind of slightly... I felt like I was putting them out, but, they kind of reassured me. Apparently a lot of women do.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah.
So I'm nervous about juggling the full bladder, with the not allowed to drink 2 hours before, but I'm going to make it work. And then I've got acupuncture beforehand. I've got acupuncture after.
Right.
So,
and how are you feeling about tomorrow?
I'm actually feeling, I think I just want to know numbers, obviously, and hope that we've got something to transfer, because I know that that's the experience for everybody. Apart from that, think I'm feeling okay. I'll be honest, I'm more nervous about the waiting after.
Yeah. So when you're waiting, once you've had transfer done. Yeah. And I guess as a teacher, it's difficult. You're a teacher in secondary school or primary school?
Secondary.
So how is it from a work perspective in terms of taking time off? Because whenever I've worked with teachers, it's very difficult.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not. I think the great thing is, because, you know, my school's a great school, but they don't have a fertility policy. Many workplaces don't. But I have been really fortunate to have people say, whatever time you need off, you need to have off. So, and that has been last minute. There have been times where I've said, look, now I've got an appointment for a blood test tomorrow. And they're like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's not ideal, but to be honest, look, it is what it is. I'm grateful for it. I'm lucky in that sense. But it is hard, because you've got your mental state coming from the hospital, thinking about that, to then coming in and teaching. There's pros and cons. I mean, the pros are you are completely distracted when you're teaching. And that's, you know, all encompassing. But obviously the con is that, you know, there have been a number of times where I've come into work crying. Bless my department, look after me, but it's really hard.
Yeah. And people often feel very guilty about taking time off with teachers, because they're like, I can't leave my class, you know, I've got an exam class, or they're at this stage or that stage. There's that kind of huge responsibility that teachers have and feel, that makes it even harder, I think, to kind of say, you know, I'm gonna take time away from that.
I think as well, it's just not the done thing for a teacher to leave on time. You know, most teachers stay for hours and even hours before. And, you know, it's kind of almost, it's not, you don't have to do that, but in order to fulfill the requirements and the work, you kind of have to.
Yeah.
I've been quite strict with myself and kind of said, you know, this is more important right now.
Yeah.
And luckily I've got great colleagues who are like, no, give me that, I'll do that. You don't need to come in, don't do that. So that's really great. I've been lucky, but I do think you're right. I think teaching, it's particularly difficult going through something like this. Yeah.
And will you then be in some of your 2-week wait? Will that be in half-term holiday? Does your half-term, will you be testing, all being well, in the half-term holiday?
So just the start of the half-term holiday.
Okay.
So I'm kind of grateful that I will have at least a week to process whatever the result is.
Yeah. And Catherine, what about you? You are in the 2-week wait, I think.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I am deep in the 2-week wait here. So yeah, we've been through the whole process. Again, it's our first foray into IVF or any kind of fertility treatment, really. So we were on a short protocol I think I had 12 days of injections in the end, because I was at risk of overstimulating, but actually didn't, that was very confusing, because all the time, and we might come to this in a bit, but the whole time I just heard overstimulation. You've got so many follicles. And I thought, well, great, I'm going to get a good number of eggs, you know? And then the actual number was a lot lower than I expected. Still fine, but I think, and the hormones didn't help, you know. But, you know, when at my scans, when they cheerily told me, you know, you can expect, 7 or 8. And don't get me wrong, for some people, they're like, God, 7 or 8 is the dream. But when I had 32 follicles, I was like, any more? And you know, I was really down about it. But again, hormones are weird and wonderful. And that one minute I was down about it, the next I was absolutely buzzing that my body had made potentially 8 eggs. So, you know, there was a little bit of kind of getting my head around that, and nobody really prepped me for that. Not that they should, but I never really realised that a high number of follicles doesn't necessarily mean a high number of eggs.
Yeah.
But I learned that. But anyway, we went for egg collection, which was absolutely fine. And we got 10 little eggs in the end, which we were super pleased with. And then this is the thing with the numbers. They don't mean anything, because of course there's an attrition rate and you want as many to start with as possible. But there's just no guarantee with the drop-off. And my clinic at Kingston, at the same hospital as Sian, they were saying, look, it's about quality. We want to get, you know, we want to get fewer really good ones that are going to get you there. You know, 30 eggs is not necessarily what you want. So yeah, we had the egg collection and we got 10 eggs. And then out of that, we've got, in the end, I know that there's drop off each time. I think at day 3, we had 6. we had 6 fertilized and they were all still going at day 3. And then we ended up with 4 little blastocysts, good quality, day 5 blastocysts. Again, I didn't know that before we went in for the transfer, and they sat me down and told us, and I was just thinking, I just want one, just something to transfer, maybe one to put in the freezer as well. But, and then they said, it's gone really well, you've got 4. I burst into tears, said to my husband, I was like, did you hear that? Did you hear that? He was like, yeah, I am here. Like, yeah, but it was like, I was like, 4. So we were thrilled with that, all good quality. So they put 1 back in me and 3 in the freezer, which we are super lucky to have. Having said that, I've definitely connected with this little MB that is in me, because like the transfer day was just the most magical. Like, I know that sounds weird, magical and IVF. It's not always put in the same sentence, but I loved the transfer day. And they were like, yeah, let's bring in the embryo. And I was like, I can't believe it. It's here. We got a little picture. So, and I asked the embryologist if she could take a picture of the embryo as well. Then we got the little scan picture. And I don't know, I was like, this is the most pregnant I've ever been. So this is the furthest that, in all likelihood, I don't know for sure, of course, but I'm pretty sure with our diagnosis that this is the furthest we've ever got. And so we keep talking to the embryo. Stuck the scan picture on the fridge, say good morning to it. Carl leaves for work in the morning. He's like, right, but it says bye to me, bye to the dog, bye to the embryo. Yeah, so the 2-week wait is, everyone will know it's a roller coaster, isn't it? Total roller coaster of emotions. So 1 minute, last night we were convinced that it's worked and we're talking about names and all this stuff. And then this morning I'm like, nope, don't feel as hopeful anymore. Like, you can be up 1 minute, down the next. I think the longer the 2-week wait goes on as well, it just drags out. It's the longest. Like, I've got 5 days left. It's the longest 5 days of my life. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, 5 days is a long time still, isn't it? Oh, it feels like it.
Yeah. We're on 4 days post-transfer.
Yeah.
No, are we? Yeah. No, we're on 6 days post-transfer, sorry, because it was last Wednesday and it's Tuesday today. 6 days post-transfer now. So, yeah, we've got till Sunday. Sunday's our official test day. So I just have no idea. And I find it so weird that it's in there and it's my body, but it's such a mystery what's going on.
Yeah, and it's so cruel, isn't it? I always think the 2-week wait, whether IVF or, with a natural cycle, it's very easy to feel pregnant because of the progesterone and the of the symptoms, breast tenderness, nausea,
every little
all
little
of
twinge.
those things can be pregnancy or your period about to come. And I just think, why is nature so cruel? Like, could it have not have meant, if you're pregnant, your ear went blue, and it would that
would be nice.
Why? Like, why is it so cruel?
That is so funny.
It's awful. I just remember especially in the TTC phase, just every time my period arrived, it just felt utter devastation.
Yeah.
It just feels so unfair, doesn't it? Yeah. So there's no fairness. There's no rhyme or reason. And now we know that with this embryo, there's pretty much a 50-50 chance of it. And I'm like, how can I make it stick? But you just can't.
I mean, it's already done. It's that's the thing that is really difficult, isn't it, to sit with? And I think we always talk about it in clinic, and we talk about it in the community a lot. Is this idea of control? Like, in life, we like to control things because it makes us feel safe. We like plans. We like to know what's happening because it really calms our nervous system. And when you're going through this, everything is out of your hands. Everything is out of your control, and that is a hard place to sit.
Totally. You've got to grab onto the things you can. I mean, I've also been doing my acupuncture, and I'm working with Melanie, who's one of your team down in Surrey, who's amazing. I'm just obsessed with her. I love her. She's so cool as well.
Yeah, with her nice clinic room as well that we're all very jealous of.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Like, so gorgeous in the Surrey countryside. And, she said to me the other day, she said, how woo-woo are you? And are you very manifesty? And I was like, no, not really. But then post-transfer, I'm like, yeah, come on, universe, bring it. What you got for me? And so I'm trying to remind myself those things like, my body's done the hard work. it knows what to do now, time to reap the rewards, hopefully. But these are all just things that I'm just telling myself that I know they're not going to have a bearing on the outcome. But you know what? If I can chill out my mind a little bit, that's cool.
Yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's about what is going to help you through, from an emotional and physical point of view. Like what is going to help those days get by and look after your mental health, because it's an important thing that you do have some control over when you're going through this.
Yeah, it's so tough. I guess distracting. I guess that's the main thing you can really do. During that time. It seems like you're doing a really good job of doing that, Catherine. So,
thanks.
Distracting.
Feel like, got to keep a level head. As I say, I've been banned from testing early, but I think that's for the best anyway.
Yeah.
Just got to keep walking the dog. The dog is thrilled. We're going on some lovely dog walks. He's like, oh, we've not been here before. Because I'm like, right, new place, long walk. Like, let's get out. Let's get our wellies on. So...
And how have you found then doing the podcast alongside all of this? Because I guess there's a lot going on, isn't there, with IVF? There's a lot to remember, there's a lot to think about, there's a lot to process, there's a lot of appointments. How have you fitted in doing a podcast and how have you found it?
I think, we've gotten into a bit of a rhythm of it now, mostly we record on a Sunday, or a weekend, and we kind of just, we're in that rhythm and it really works for us. I think the good thing about it is that it really helps us to look back at our week and gain some perspective on what we've been through. So weirdly, it kind of feels like, yes, it's a friendship, but it's also... feels a bit like therapy, to be quite honest. And I found it personally really helpful, actually, because I really hope that I can kind of look back and go, I need to remember what that was like. In a weird way, because I know a lot of people go through this and go, I never want to remember this period of my life ever again. But in a weird way, I feel like you can learn a lot in this sort of period. And especially because we're going through it at the same time, actually there's so many pros to it because we can lean on each other, but we're actually starting to experience, we touched upon this last Sunday, didn't we, Catherine? Talking about the updates and how they actually weirdly can be a little bit triggering for each of us.
A little bit, yeah. This is the thing, that the difficulty is, and I agree with Sian, so far it's been a release for me, and I think Sian and I have a very special friendship, that it takes a really special kind of friendship to kind of navigate this, because we're going through it in such close parallels. It can be a little bit confronting when we know that the big thing is, what if one of us gets pregnant and the other one doesn't? And we have discussed what that might feel like. We've discussed maybe how we want to tell how the other person would like us to tell them, if it's a positive. I said to Sian, like, do you want a text? Do you want a voice? Do you want a picture? No picture? Like, what do you want? So we've discussed that, and how that might be. Yeah, like, obviously I want it for Sian so badly, and I would be jumping for joy. But there would be mixed feelings for both of us. I think hopefully we'll get both of us there soon. But we've discussed that. But then in smaller ways, which I didn't really expect, things like, so I obviously went through the egg collection process first, and we went through the fertilization and stuff. And, I was updating Sian, and I was like, out of, 9 mature eggs, 6 fertilized, all 6 still going on the Monday. Great. And then 4 blastocysts. Obviously, Sian was so pleased for me. But then she went, but does, in a weird way, and we all get a bit superstitious because it doesn't work like this. She went, but what if I don't get that? And does that mean that I'll be the one that doesn't get those good results? And then I did exactly the same thing when Sian got quite a high number of eggs. And I went, well, I feel like I didn't do very well now. And it takes real honesty to express that to each other. And I said it to Sian. I said, I feel like that's put my 10 eggs in the shade or whatever, in kind of a jokey way. But Sian came straight back. And again, this is why, you need special friends around you at a time like this, because Sian came straight back and went, I completely understand. And I would feel the same. So it flips around so quickly. And that is the only thing about going through it so closely at the same time as a really good friend. You fall into a comparison trap sometimes, and it's just not helpful, is it?
Yeah, no. And also I'm glad that we're being upfront about that, because it also mirrors people who perhaps aren't going through IVF, but are trying for a baby. And, you know, quite often these conversations don't happen. You know, people just sort of announce they're pregnant, but they don't necessarily have the foresight, which, you know, I get it. You wouldn't always, but you wouldn't necessarily have the foresight to go, how am I going to do this delicately? How are we going to navigate our friendship and talk about this? But
how are we going to protect our friendship?
Yes.
You know, how are we going to make sure that we're still friends on the other side of this, whatever happens?
Yeah. How are we going to grow from it? And I think the only way you really can is being really honest about it.
And I guess people listening to this will also, the conversations that you're having will make them think about the conversations that they then have, whether they're trying to conceive or they've got a friend trying to conceive, or that whole idea about comparison, comparing your journey with another person's is a huge thing. It's obviously it's human nature, but it's really unhelpful because we're so individual, and every single fertility journey is completely unique. Every single cycle is completely unique. It's very difficult to compare, and you can very easily find yourself going round and round in circles when you're trying to find we see it in clinic when people do round after round, and one round might have been successful and they're trying to recreate every single thing that happened with that successful round. And unfortunately, it's not like that, because a lot of the time it doesn't make any sense. It's not a formula that you can then repeat and repeat, because we're all so unique and different, which is, again, really difficult.
And I think also as women, there's this sense a lot of the time that we are sort of conditioned to be competitive with each other. Sadly, we're kind of taught there's not room for everyone. And in that sense, it's kind of, again, it's not logical, but we think, right, well, there aren't enough. If you've got those results, there aren't enough for me. And I feel like it's just, you know, a reminder of how, as women, we can be taught, you know, there's not room at the table for all of you, etc. And it's just not the case. So we experienced that a little bit, didn't we? These last couple of weeks, which was hard. Again, I'm so grateful because Sian is just the most generous person in the world, and just
vice versa.
Oh,
Vice versa. Yeah, I think it's interesting also when you're talking about lack of control as well, Hannah, as well. The lack of control means that you do heavily lean on these statistics and these measurements, even if they're your friends' measurements.
Yeah.
You kind of use that as a way of reflecting your own. You know, even, you know, Andrew, my husband, he hilariously made an Excel spreadsheet to work out, you know, the number of, you know, drop-offs for the eggs. And he's looking at it and going, hang on a minute. According to the NHS guidelines, it says this, but we're here, and what's going on here? And it's so hard, the lack of control. So it's natural. It's only natural that we're going to really hang on to numbers and figures and stats, you know.
So what have you found helpful going through this? You know, like, I guess you're still going through it, but so far to this point, what are the other things that you've found have, you know, for people who will be listening to this, about to embark or embarking as well through their journey? What are your kind of things that you have really helped, that you'd like to pass on?
Well, finding your community, finding your people. And by the way, it can come from the places you really don't expect, like a Facebook group. Or, you know, I have a really great friend at work that I didn't know that well. But then I found out about her journey, and then we connected. And it's things like that you start to open up, and you start to see, actually, wow, these are my people. And I honestly don't think I could have gotten through it without other people who are going through it. I just couldn't. That's been my number one. What about you, Catherine?
Yeah, I think connection is massive. Just to feel like you're less on your own, that definitely helps. A good support network, God. And it's really hard because it's not for everyone. Some people don't feel they can talk to their family, their friends, etc. And in opening up as well, you do open up a bit of a can of worms for a lot of maybe less helpful questions or advice or comments, etc., from well-meaning people, really well-meaning. But God, my support network, you know, my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law, they set up a WhatsApp group so that we can, just with them, so that we can give them the updates and they can both receive it at the same time. And, you know, I've had my mum step in. And fun fact, actually, I'm an IVF baby.
I saw that on
Yeah.
your Insta. Yeah.
Well, my parents had in the early 90s, because I was born in 91, they had a similar process. It was either gift or zift, which they don't do anymore, which is where basically they put the embryos back in the fallopian tube, which is a little bit, crazy
Yeah.
now when you think about it. But it was the 90s. I think a lot of it was crazy. So my mum has prior kind of experience, my parents have, and it's opened up some interesting conversations with them. I mean, bless, I think my mum, every time I ask her about how it felt, she kind of says, well, I was fine, got through it, was fine. And I don't know if that's a bit of stiff upper lip or if she can't remember. But, you know, she's been there with me and my sister, because I've got a twin sister. They put 3 back in my mum. Can't believe it.
Yeah.
I know. But 2 of us grabbed on and stuck. That's me and my sis. But yeah, so she's been on hand to kind of help. She's been helping me at work, actually, if I've needed, because my egg collection day was on a day that my school was running, my classes. Of course it was. Of course it was a stagecoach day. So my mum stepped in. She's trained up as a principal as well. And she's got the DBS and the first aid and everything. And, you know, our head office were like, yeah, no problem. So my mum stepped in and she covered everything. You know, your support network, I think, massive.
Yeah. Our husbands as well.
Oh, the boys. Husbands and pets.
Everything. Honestly, I couldn't do it without, with our husbands and our pets and, people at home. You can be really honest. Getting that communication right at home is really important. Being open, being honest. It is so much better than masking. I found personally, I've really loved my yoga, although I've really struggled not being able to do much of all of this stuff during IVF. But exercise and yoga has been really helpful for me, because it just feels like you're surrendering. You know, it's kind of that constant battle of control and letting go, which I always find really helpful on the mat.
Yeah.
I think it's things like that. I think things like talking about it, distracting, watching your favourite thing, treating yourself well, actually made me realise through this that perhaps I'm not putting myself first all the time, and I would do things, that were possibly not what I needed in that time. And actually I've been a lot stronger at being able to go, no, actually, I need this. That's what I want to do. That's been quite a tough learning curve, actually. But I do recommend that, saying no to things as well as saying yes.
And I think also those little things, like it sounds really silly, but after egg collection, I made sure there were fresh sheets on the bed and had new pajamas ready to go. And, those little things, buy your favourite, herbal tea or, those things too, to kind of just keep your day-to-day a little bit exciting, because we've probably given up a lot of the wine and the coffee.
Yeah.
So, find the joy in your new pajamas instead, maybe.
It's about finding things that like soothe your nervous system, that just sort of bring you a little bit of joy, whatever that is. Because like you say, the things that we usually turn to are kind of often off the cards when it comes to going through fertility treatment. So it's about what can replace that.
I'll give you a weird one. Horror films.
Really?
I've really enjoyed listening to watching horror films and horror series, because it sounds a bit sad, but it's a real break from what's going on in my mind.
Yeah.
I enjoyed watching all the gore and all sorts. It's terrible, isn't it?
I think I'm the opposite, and I've picked all the comfy, cozy sitcoms that I've watched a million times, and I've gone back to. I've just found myself starting Fresh Meat again. Did you ever watch that?
Yeah, I've done that a few times.
Such a good, so have I think. I always go back to the same things, like, so, an episode of Friends or,
Gavin and Stacey is my go-to. Whenever I'm feeling like I don't know what I need, I'm like, it's Gavin and Stacey.
Yeah.
How good was the final?
It was so good. It was so good.
Cried so much. Many times. And there was a little nod to infertility in there as well, which we loved. Yeah.
So where do you see the podcast going? Like, where have you thought in your minds when, like, where is it going to go?
So one thing I think is really important, and I might be getting a bit ahead of myself here, but Sian and I have both discussed that it can never become a pregnancy podcast or a
Yeah.
parenting podcast. And this is, again, being wishful thinking. We hope the aim is to get us both over the other side and have good news. But I don't think we ever want to be responsible for upsetting people. It would just become a really difficult space for these people that feel like they've gotten to know us and that we've chatted to on the Instagram and everything. It would become so difficult. And we've all been there when we've really into a podcast, etc. And then all of a sudden, one of them gets pregnant and then it becomes about their pregnancy or whatever.
Cool.
And we've both said it will never and it can never become about that. So I think in my mind, I don't know if Sian, if you agree, I know we've spoken about that bit before, but I think if we both, fingers crossed, if we both have success, be it now, be it later down the line, whatever, I think personally we would probably turn to the experiences of others, experts, maybe we'd love to. And also I'm really aware that we're two white middle-class women in our 30s. And you know, we see the world through a specific lens, and there are so many people that maybe don't feel represented by us, which is totally fair. So it'd be great to get different voices of fertility, of, you know, trying to become parents. Yeah, exactly. Get some experts, because we don't know what we're talking about. So
some like anything about the new research or anything that's, you know, changing in the world of fertility would be really interesting to us, wouldn't it?
I just think it needs to always still at its heart be a helpful thing. For me and for Sian, I know you're the same. It's never self-serving. It's never about how many how many listens can we get, how many downloads, etc. You know, it's quite nice when we get a review, don't get me wrong, but like it's always about if it needs to stay with other people at its forefront, really. How can we keep it helpful, keep it soothing? Even like when we were picking the music for it, we were like, this needs to feel like a hug. You know, people are going to be feeling frazzled. So I think it needs to stay a really safe space for people. And that's what I mean, obviously, we really, really hope that it happens for both of us. But I'm always thinking about the people in our DMs and the people in our inboxes that might feel left behind by us. And I never want that to happen. And I know, Sian, you feel the same, don't you?
Yeah, and I do feel as well, it's definitely something that's needed, because how many people we've had message say they feel completely alone. They've got no one to talk to. You know, this person who's younger than them or hasn't been trying as long has now got pregnant. They don't know how to cope. It's just honestly devastating.
Yeah. And it's called IVF BFF because, and now this was inspired by something else on a different fertility podcast, which is an amazing podcast, really successful. But they spoke about who your IVF BFF is. And I kind of went, Sian, that's you. And I sent her the post and I was like, you're my IVF BFF. And we decided to call it that. And so many people have said, I don't have an IVF BFF. And so I feel like you guys are my IVF BFF.
Yeah.
So we'd love that. It's that feel in a way. We'd love that to continue, I think.
Yeah.
So will you record? So Catherine, you're testing on Sunday.
Yeah.
Will you record on Sunday?
I don't think so. So, you know, we're all about in the here and now, but that might be a little bit too here and now.
Yeah.
So still in real time as much as possible. But yeah, if there's no episode on Monday morning, it's not necessarily bad news, but I think Carl and I have just made ourselves a little promise that we're taking the whole day to ourselves. We've booked a roast dinner at the pub, because we might end up cancelling if we don't fancy it, but we might want something to go and do. And yeah, so I think that the feelings will still be definitely raw and real, but I think probably a few days after, right, Sian? Because we're going to want to talk about your transfer and stuff as well. So maybe early next week we'll record, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's the right thing to do, really.
Yeah, and it is hard because it's, you know, it's that reminding yourself that we are still in control of what we share and how much we share. Because I feel like, oh no, but everyone wants to know. You know, it's got to be. We've got to have a little bit of that. You know, we've got to share it on our terms. That's the only other thing about being very open and very, you know, honest and open with everyone, whether it's your friends and family or whether it's the internet, like we've done. Everyone knows. So many people know in my life where we're at, when our test day is, that when our transfer was, and so I feel like infertility does rob you a little bit of that kind of, we'll never get to do one of those videos where we hand our parents, the pregnancy test and they go, oh, and they're shocked and surprised. And we just don't get that because everyone knows exactly what might happen or might not happen on Sunday. But it's a different kind of, we feel the love, we feel the support, but that is the only thing about being so open with it. That part of the, how you envision your announcing to look like. And as well, if it's good news, which I hope it is, I'm so aware of not upsetting people, and it's going to be sensitive, and we've got to do things in the right way, So that's the only thing that this kind of does take from you a little bit. But then again, it's different, and everyone, sent a picture of my embryo on the family WhatsApp, and they're like, oh my God, amazing. It's, it's just a different journey, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure not everyone can say they sent a picture of an embryo on a family WhatsApp. So there you go.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much, Sian and Catherine, for your time. It's been really good to do this episode with you during this time. I really appreciate you spending the time talking to me today. So, Sian, good luck for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We will all keep everything crossed for you. I hope it all goes smoothly. Good luck with the 2-week wait. And Catherine, good luck for Sunday.
Thank you so much.
And testing. And Sian, good luck for when it's your test day as well. You're doing really, really well. And I think your podcast is amazing. And I think there are lots and lots of people who are listening and getting so much support and comfort and connection from it. So, it's amazing that you've done this.
I do want to say as well to you, Hannah, as well, thank you, because, this wouldn't really have happened.
It wouldn't have happened without you.
I mean, literally, my heart is so full. I couldn't believe it. When you said that you'd met in the group, I was like, what?
Yeah, it's magic. And also, is it okay to just say that if people want to follow us on Instagram?
Absolutely, go for it.
Yeah. They can follow us on Instagram at IVF BFF Pod. And we have loads of nice chats with people in our DMs.
Yeah.
We love it. And we also have an email address, ivfbffpod@gmail.com. So, come and join us and jump on board.
Well, I will put all those details at the end of the show. So I'm sure lots of people will follow you and want to hear how you get on and be really keeping everything crossed for you both.
Thank you so much, Hannah.
Thank you. All right. Well, good luck. And we'll keep in contact. I know we will keep in contact.
Oh, yeah.
We're thinking of you.
Oh, thank you, Hannah.
Oh, thank you.
We hope you have found this helpful. If you'd like more on fertility education, please see our Teaching to Conceive free course linked at the end of the show. You'll also find the link to join our community. For more personalised fertility support, you can work with us one-to-one in clinic and online. You can book a discovery call to find out more.